What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of The Play Callers. This is the only interactive sports talk show by the fans for the
For the
fans.
fans.
I am, of course, one half of the dynamic duo, Stephen Box, joined as always by my co-host, the one and the only.
Cool McCain. Y'all know what it is.
So, man, a lot of stuff to talk about in sports tonight. But before we get into that, man, we got to go ahead and talk about the news of the day. Something that I know had an impact on both of us, man, and that is RIP to DMX. I know it's not sports related, but got to talk about it, man.
Got to talk about it, man. Dude meant a lot. You know what I'm saying? Think it's one of those times where you appreciate the music and everything that the person brought when you're looking at it retrospectively in its own lane versus against everything else. You know, DMX spoke to an angry, you know, late teenager, you know what I'm saying, who felt that same pain that he did, you know, maybe in different ways, but felt that same pain, man. And I was able to connect with this dude like I knew him, though I never met him. You know what I'm saying? So it's tough, man. It's something that, you know, hearing the news was, you know, gonna happen just because, you know, you can't really live brain dead, but it's still hard to come to grips with, you know, losing another icon, man. I mean, you know, there's a lot of even rappers, you know, producers, executives that was calling this dude the GOAT. You know what I'm saying? And if it wasn't for some of the other things that derailed him, man, I believe it would have been because the style was different. It was real. Every song he was on, man, every guest verse, every song, you know, every chorus, whatever, you could feel it. You know, you could just feel the realness in his music, man, and that's gonna be missed.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I just want to go ahead and throw it out there. First of all, what's up, Big E? Appreciate you joining us tonight. If you guys would just drop in the comments, whether you're watching this on replay, watching this live, whatever, man, drop up in the comments. Let us know your favorite DMX song tonight. That's what we're going to do throughout the course of the show. We'll be asking that a couple times as people tune in. Just gonna ask you, just drop your favorite DMX song, man. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask my co-host here, what's that song for you?
It's hard to say, man, but if I gotta pick one, I'm gonna just go with the Rough Riders anthem.
It's not a bad one, man. It's not a bad one.
There was 4 or 5 other ones, but I'm gonna just keep it at one.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways you could go with this, right? It's like which song is like the raw emotional song, which song is the most lyrical song. You could go so many ways with it. I'm actually gonna keep this a little bit sports athletic related because one of my favorite songs to listen to in the gym or before I go out and play like basketball, anything, one of my hype up songs will always be X gonna give it to you.
That's a good one as well. That's a good one as well. But yeah, man, you guys in the comments, you can give us your favorite song. And if you have like a favorite lyric or a favorite, you know, quote from X, man, drop it in the comments for us. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. So, man, trying to transition from some unfortunate news tonight to kind of talk about some of the stuff going on in sports right now. And obviously, a big story that dropped since our last episode was the Jets made it a little bit more clear what they plan on doing at number 2. Not that most of us didn't already have a pretty good idea, but there's a little clarity around that. And we might realistically have the top 4 picks in the draft now being quarterbacks.
It's a high possibility, man. And it was something that, you know, was expected. You know, a lot of the mock drafts had different ones. But a lot of them all had quarterbacks in that top 4. You know, maybe the order of who there would be different. A lot of trades, a lot of speculative trades for those quarterbacks. But I think a lot of people have that, as those top ones. And for the Panthers, if you look at the side of them getting Sam Darnold, you got a guy who's on a rookie contract. You got a couple of years to figure out if he's the guy or not. If you think Matt Rule's this great player whisperer and quarterback whisperer that he's touted to be, then we'll see what he can do with Sam Darnold. Now, I did read some articles and some quotes from the Jets where they said that they failed Sam Darnold. Obviously, if you're going to trade someone or you're in the process of trading him, you're not going to come out and say, hey, this guy sucks, you shouldn't trade for him. So we'll see. But I do think that this does make, the Panthers at least the potential higher.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when I look at the Panthers, I think it's a good trade for them. They didn't really give up a lot. They got a young guy who a lot of people feel could still turn his career around and turn into something. So I don't really blame them for taking a flyer on him. It's definitely an improvement over Teddy Bridgewater and what he gave you last year. Well, I'll say a potential improvement over Teddy Bridgewater because I don't think it's a sure thing. But at the same time, I think that people really need to look at this and be like, the Jets had the opportunity at 2 to go get this dude a really good offensive lineman to protect him. They could have went and got him several of the wide receivers that were on the board. They could have actually traded out of this pick, kept Sam Darnold, traded out his pick, and picked up even more picks to be able to put more weapons around him. But instead, they chose to go with somebody else. And I do not think that can be overlooked because they are the organization that's had the best look at him and knows what the potential for him to turn it around is. And they said, hey, we'd rather go with a rookie.
Well, I say this, man. I think that the new coach wanted to have his own guys in there. And I think, they were basically, I guess I don't know any other way to put it. They were basically throwing games to try to have a top pick, but they messed around and won. So they ended up with a top 2 pick. So clearly they were going for a quarterback, like before the season started. Unless Darnold came out and played amazing, which he wasn't going to be able to do with the guy that they had as the head coach, Adam Gase, because he clearly didn't know how to use this guy correctly. They didn't have the right weapons around him, so he wasn't in a no-win situation with the Jets. They were basically using him to get a top pick to draft a quarterback. So I would say I can't I do agree. Witty Flow, what's up, by the way? That was another good DMX. So I know the one you're talking about with that limit from it. But it's simply, man, once you make up your mind, I think you hang with the process because at the end of the day, you know what you have with Darnold with the Jets. And I believe he's a guy that's going to be a serviceable NFL quarterback. But you have to think about it from the perspective of they didn't believe in him, right? So you might as well get him out of there. This way you get a fresh start. You get 4 to 5 years with a guy you can control his contract. So you don't have to pay him for a couple of more years, and you get rid of a guy that didn't make it happen with you. Like I said, I think we saw enough from him to say that he can go somewhere else and he can, be serviceable. I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 quarterback, but I feel like he can have a better career than Andy Dalton. I'm not very high on Andy Dalton, and anyone who knows me knows that. But I think he can be, better than a guy who started in Cincinnati for many years where I think he stole paychecks. But, that's neither here nor there, but that's, my opinion. But, he's not terrible. He's not great. He was saddled with Adam Gase, who's a virus, like Witty Flow said. So completely agree with that. But it's just a matter of you have to get in there and you have to show everyone that I'm better than what was there. And here's the thing from his perspective. He didn't have to stay with the Panthers. He's got 2 more years and then an option for his 5th year. If after that option, if he wants to go, I'm sure the Panthers will be like, bye. So he's really auditioning for the rest of the league to say, hey, you put me on a better team. Here's what I can do. So I think that's kind of how he's looking at it. And I think it's the best thing for both parties. Sometimes you just need to separate. It's like a bad marriage. Sometimes you need to be away from each other. So I think it's going to work out for both parties if the Jets are wise with their pick and if they, use the strength of their coach. He's a defensive coach. Build that defense up and make that happen. Now, question for you and anybody in the chat: what do you guys think is going to happen with Teddy Bridgewater now?
So I got a couple of hot takes for you here. So first of all, with Teddy Bridgewater, I think that more than likely he's going to stay in Carolina and compete for the job this year. Just because I feel like a lot of people have already made their move for a quarterback. And the couple of teams that are still looking for a quarterback, he's not a sure thing. Now, I think somebody might be willing to trade you maybe a fifth, sixth rounder to try to bring him in to be their backup. But no one at this stage is really looking at Teddy Bridgewater as a starter. Now, is it possible that maybe beginning of the year that there's some injuries, somebody might be a little bit desperate, they might call about Teddy Bridgewater to bring him in to be a temporary starter? That could happen. We could see that scenario play out. But between now and the draft, I don't really see anything happening.
Makes sense. Personally, I think, that I think he's actually going to start the season on a different team. I don't think it'll be as a starter, but I think that he'll end up on a different team, possibly battling a young guy for the starting job. I could see him as a possibility, maybe going like to Miami if they keep Tua, just throw a veteran in there and see what happens. I know at one point there were some rumblings here in Charlotte that New Orleans was looking to maybe trade a late round pick and get him back there because he has success there. There's a couple of teams who could use him. Carolina could end up keeping him, but even New England could use him as like a backup to Cam Newton. He's a guy that does similar things, not as athletic as Cam Newton, but a guy that you could plug in if Newton has an injury or anything again and can, do similar things. So I think there's opportunities for him. The Chargers, back up there. I think there's opportunities for him, as you said, but I don't think a lot of those opportunities constitute him being a starter. I think the Panthers was his last real chance to be a starter, and that didn't really go that well. Not all his fault because, again, the Panthers had some talent, but we're not looking at a team that had dynamic wide receivers who make a lot of catches and make big plays for, their quarterbacks last year. They weren't horrible, but they were the definition in the middle of the pack.
So here's my other hot take, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. I keep hearing everybody is saying Zach Wilson is going to the Jets. It's a done deal. And I don't necessarily buy it. And here's my reason why. If you look at Zach Wilson, he, out of the quarterbacks that are available, he's the one with the gunslinger mentality. He's the one who's going to be the most prone to possibly turn the ball over in the NFL because he's going to take chances. He's going to try to make those crazy throws. And we know sometimes those will end up well. You just hired a defensive-minded coach. A defensive-minded coach, the one thing they hate more than anything else is a quarterback who's going to constantly put a defense back on the field. I would not be surprised if the Jets decide to go either with Matt Jones or Justin Fields, just because they both are going to be a little bit more careful with the ball. They both have fewer turnovers. They both have a little bit higher level of accuracy. So I would not be surprised to actually see them go with one of those two guys because they may prefer a quarterback who's going to be a little bit safer with the football.
Well, I will say this. There's been a lot of rumblings from Philadelphia and we actually were engaged with trade talks with Miami to get into the number 3 pick because they have a unhealthy obsession with Zach Wilson. But we decided to not pull the trigger on the trade because we found out information that he wasn't going to be there at 3. So that's why you guys are at 3, and you gave up as much as you did because we decided that we weren't going to do that. So we ended up trading back when we realized that we weren't going to be able to get up to 3 to get the guy we wanted because he was going to be gone. That's, multiple reports. I've heard from the Eagles organization, Eagles insiders who are normally spot on, that's the reason why we didn't trade with Miami for the number 3 pick. So there's that. But outside of that, if you're the Jets, you're only considering, I think, 2 quarterbacks, and it's Justin Fields and Zach Wilson. I think if you're looking to get a guy that you can grow and groom, Zach Wilson is the guy. If you're looking for a guy that you want to plug and play immediately and maybe bring him along with portions of the playbook, then maybe that guy's Justin Fields. I do believe that you guys traded to the number 3 pick with the expectation that Fields and Matt Jones would be the guys that you were looking at, or if there's another quarterback that you really wanted outside of those two. I feel that there's a possibility the Jets would go with Fields over Wilson, but I'm pretty confident that, unless something happens at the last minute to change their thought process, they're going to go with Wilson. I will say if they go with Matt Jones at number 2, that shows an incompetence on the Jets, because I don't think he's a quarterback you have to draft that high. I think you can trade back anywhere in the top 6 to 10 picks and still get him. Someone could end up reaching for him depending on whoever else is off the board. And I'm not knocking him, but you have to use what he's done, the matrix, the longevity of him being a really good player, which is 1 year, when you're looking at evaluating him. And that doesn't mean that he cannot outplay that. But when you're taking a chance on a quarterback that you want to be your franchise quarterback, you better be confident that that individual can step in within 1 or 2 years and make a difference for your team. I don't buy that with Matt Jones at this point, and he could prove me wrong. And if he does, more power to him. But I don't buy that. And I've seen a lot of other analysts that don't buy that as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to go in through Woody Flow comment up on the screen here. So his argument against Justin Fields is that he played at Ohio State, who hasn't really had a whole lot of success with quarterbacks in the NFL. And my thing is, I don't necessarily buy into these arguments for a couple of reasons. Number one, you have to stop and look at the quarterbacks that they've had. A lot of times, these programs, they get good college quarterbacks, but they don't get guys who translate to the NFL. Florida State, if you go back to the 80s and the 90s, had literally a 15-year window in which they finished in the top 3 in the country, or in the top 5 in the country every single year. And most of those years was the top 3. Out of that entire 15-year period, they didn't have not one quarterback who went to the NFL and had any level of success, with the exception of Brad Johnson, who wasn't even a starter at Florida State. And even his level of success was basically as a ball manager for a really great team. So when you look at these college programs, they're not really designed necessarily to have great quarterbacks. And the thing is, over at Ohio State, remember the last couple of years when they've been good again, their coach for most of those years was Urban Meyer. Now, you were talking about a guy who hasn't had a lot of success coaching quarterbacks. Urban Meyer quarterbacks have traditionally not done that well in the NFL. Nor have Jimbo Fisher quarterbacks. Just taking a little shot there. But the thing is, Fields is coming from a different offense. He's coming from a different guy. So what Ohio State did this past year, the year before, without Urban Meyer there, is completely different. And so therefore, anything that's happened with Ohio State quarterbacks before now is kind of irrelevant. And I just think sometimes we get caught up in they went to the school. That school never produces good quarterbacks.
Well, I'll simply say this. And Woody Flow did put up a list of guys. There isn't a guy on this list that I thought was going to be a great NFL quarterback.
Basically.
Troy Smith would have been probably better. Him and Terrell Pryor definitely would be better NFL wide receivers than quarterbacks. Dwayne Haskins. The thing with Dwayne Haskins is simply this. There's talent there. This is the problem. Not the Eagles' brain. You have to be able to be smart, right? Because Haskins had some good games on the field. I won't say great games, but he had some good games. But you do a lot of unintelligent things off the field. So Haskins, we're looking at a guy who was there, 2 years? They cut him because of off-field things. So who's not to say, number one, he doesn't go somewhere else and step it up? He's going to get another opportunity because he's a first-round talent. You always get 2 opportunities when you're a first-round talent. Now if he blows this next one, then yeah, he's on the list with everybody else. But I'm going to go to Justin Fields. And this is what I'm going to say about Justin Fields. And I don't talk really well about non-Miami quarterbacks much, except for guys that everybody loves. But what I do like about Justin Fields, and I see a few Ohio State games, is he can read the field. He's mobile, but he's not a run-first quarterback.
Right.
So that's a big thing for me, because you look at guys like Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, heck, you can even go Aaron Rodgers, Steve Young. You look at those guys, they could move, they could run, but they never looked to run first.
Right.
Their first thing is to read the defense.
Mm-hmm.
If they read and they don't have a play, then they start to make things happen with their legs, still looking up. Now, college to pro is a difference. So we still have to see what Justin Fields can do on the pro level against a pro level defense. Right. But I saw a guy who went through progressions, who made crisp passes, who passed up some opportunities because they may have not been a smart 50-50 opportunity. So I think when you're looking at him, like you said, different system, but also a different level of understanding the quarterback position, actually being a quarterback first and not a athlete who has the ability to play quarterback, but being a quarterback. I really think that he's a guy that's going to do well long term. I would prefer him to come into a situation where he's got someone he needs to beat out to get the job, or has to earn it and not be handed the job, even if he does turn out to be a top pick. So I think that's the way I feel about Justin Fields. I do see your point, Witty Flow, based on history, because if you have 4, 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks that haven't done well from a particular, school, then yeah, anytime somebody comes out, the first thing you're going to say is, they don't produce quarterbacks. But just think about him in a vacuum. Take him off Ohio State and look at what he does the last few years, how he plays, what he does. And you'll see a guy who should be able to be successful in the NFL. But again, the translation, that's the part that we never know, right? That's the part that we see some guys and we think, oh, this guy's it. He's got it. He's got everything. He's going to get it done in the NFL. And then he gets there and stinks. And we see some guys where we're like, I don't really know about him. He's been a career backup. He never got a chance to really play. When he played, he didn't play well. Something happens. He gets the opportunity in the NFL, goes on to be a great quarterback, or at least a serviceable one. So we never know for sure, but he has the ability, the skills, and he could read defenses to be able, in my opinion, to be at least a pretty good NFL quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, my personal feelings on it. I want Justin Fields to be the guy that we draft at 3. And I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there, because if we're going to true point this out about Justin Fields, then we also need to point this out about other guys. You have to go all the way back to Steve Young to find a successful BYU quarterback. I don't even know how far you got to go back, probably before my lifetime, to find an Alabama quarterback that came to the NFL and had success. So if we just go by past success of the school at that position, then none of these guys should be getting drafted in the top 5.
So how about we throw that question up there for Witty Flow? What do we think about Gardner Minshew? Impressive mustache, erratic play. He could be moved, actually, because I think he could get you a mid-round pick, I think. But the thing is, are you bringing in Trevor Lawrence and saying, here's the keys to the car? You're not going to do any chores. You're not going to earn it. We're just going to give it to you. Or are you going to draft him and say, you've got to beat out Gardner Minshew first? Essentially, it's pretty much saying the same thing. It's just a matter of how long it'll take for him to get the keys instead of just being thrown to him as soon as he's drafted. I think Minshew's what I would call like a tier 2 quarterback. I wouldn't put him in my top 10 to 15 quarterbacks, but maybe right under that, you start having those guys that right situation, he gets plugged into it. Good line, good wide receivers, a running back that can run and catch. Maybe a team that uses, a H back or a fullback at times to have an extra blocker in there to help, or two tight end sets and one tight end stays in the block. Those type of things. I think you put him in one of those situations. You got a guy that can get it done for you. But again, situational, tier 2, not what I would consider a top quarterback. Because if he was a better quarterback, they wouldn't have the number 1 pick.
Yeah, I think he's a solid backup quarterback. He's a guy who, in spot plays with the right weapons around him against certain teams, can get you some wins. I know you might be like, well, you could probably say that about just about anybody in the NFL, right? But the reality is that's what he is. He's a guy who needs the right pieces around him, and he needs it to be a good opportunity. You're not going to put Gardner Minshew out there with a banged up offensive line, no wide receivers against a really good defense and expect him to win you a game. But if you're looking for a guy who just can come in case of an injury, plug in for 1 or 2 games, he's a solid option, which is why I don't think they're going to trade him. I think they'll keep him.
I think they'll trade him once he loses a starting job. Now
when I say trade him, I mean like in the immediate.
Yeah, they'll trade him. I think he'll probably be traded by the time the season starts.
Yeah, I mean it could definitely happen, man.
You want the assets. He's not going to be your guy. You can get another guy in there to be the backup that's a more of a veteran leader for Trevor Lawrence. So I don't think he's going to end up there too long. That would be my interpretation of the situation.
Your interpretation of the situation. Now, yes, I will just say, I'm going to go ahead and put this on air so that way it's out there. People can hear it. It's going to be living here forever. If the 49ers draft Mac Jones at 3, it is a fireable offense. Because here's my thing with Mac Jones. And this isn't really about if he's a good fit for the offense or anything like that. Because here's the thing. Mac Jones could probably come in, if he was the starter day 1 at San Francisco, with the talent that's around, with Kyle Shanahan calling the plays, he could probably win Rookie of the Year. But you know what? I could probably say that about any of the quarterbacks in this draft coming into that situation. And if we were to draft him, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to my organization here that they know what they're doing. But to me, Mac Jones, we already know what his ceiling is. His ceiling is basically like Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo-esque. That's just what it is. I mean, he could be a solid player in the league. He might be a guy that sticks around for 10 years. Might be one of those guys that bounces around to 4 or 5 different teams. But he's a guy who could have like that 10-year career, be a solid guy. He's not an exciting player. He's not a guy that you give up 2 first-round draft picks and a third for. If the 49ers draft him and it does not lead to a Super Bowl trophy, it is a fireable offense. And that is my take on Mac Jones. And not just because it's the 49ers. If you were traded up to 3 and took Mac Jones, I'd be saying the same thing.
You don't trade up to 3 to take Mac Jones. That's my thing. You don't trade up to 3 to take Mac Jones. I mean, I can say that 4 more times. You do not trade up to 3 to take Mac Jones and expect to keep your job. Let me say that. So
even Bill O'Brien wouldn't trade up to 3 to take Mac Jones.
Now you're going too far. Whoa. You're going too far. That's how B.O.B. rolls.
B.O.B. would have gave up an extra first-round draft pick for it, too.
But nah, jokes aside, man, it's really crazy that we're sitting here talking about Mac Jones at number 3.
Yeah.
it just shows you like when you have guys that had that one great year, and it doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and then they come into the NFL and they have success like we had last year before he was injured. You know what I'm talking about, Mr. Bureau. Now all of a sudden, everyone kind of believes that that's the same. Matt Jones did not put up a statistical year that Joe Burrow did. Matt Jones did not have a command of that offense like Joe Burrow did. He wasn't the same player. Let's not get on this wagon of, people have one great year, they come in the league and they're great. Joe Burrow, you could tell he was special.
Yeah.
That was a no-brainer pick. Matt Jones is not Joe Burrow. Let's not do that. Let's not set organizations back attempting to reach. If you've evaluated him.
I was just going to say, let's also go ahead and point out the fact that while Joe Burrow did have some weapons, he did not have 3 freaking wide receivers who are all going to potentially go in the first round.
Well, if you look at most mock drafts, you got 2 of them going in the top 10 to 15 picks.
Right.
But I simply just say, man, don't use that. If you evaluate him and you feel like he's the best quarterback for you and you trade into the top 5 to get him, the first thing I would say is shame on whoever evaluates talent for your team. But if that's what you could come up with as your decision, then I guess you got to follow it. Understand that you better update your resume when you make that, that suggestion, because you're probably not going to have that job much longer. But, you have to be smart. A lot of it, too, is fit. Name a team that's in like the top 5 besides Atlanta that has multiple 2 to 3 really solid wide receivers, right? So if Atlanta were to say, we're going to stay put and we're going to draft Mac Jones, you've already got a guy there that can start right now. So Jones can come along, take his spot or whatever. Or you could go line or you could go defense. There's several things Atlanta could do. But I could see Atlanta, if someone says, I'm going to be the team to draft Matt Jones, I can see it being Atlanta because you're putting him in a similar situation.
Yeah.
And you're giving them guys with Alabama.
Yeah. But by the way, just say hello to Sandra, who's joined us on YouTube also.
Hello.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at situations in which that makes sense, I know a lot of people might argue, well, San Francisco has some good young talent in Debo and Ayuk, and you got George Kittle there. So you have some talent for him to throw the ball to. But I would also say that you're absolutely right that in terms of wide receiving cores that would be equal to what he was throwing to Alabama, the Falcons are really the only team that can honestly say that. So unless the Falcons are going to draft him, spoiler alert, they're not, then I don't really see the point.
So I'm going to answer Witty Flow. You can only evaluate someone based on what they've done. Recall that Tom Brady did not start at Michigan. So how can you evaluate him properly if you don't see him on the field? So it's hard. He slipped through the cracks, but don't forget, and this is my campaign for as long as I have breath and I have a good memory, he's a cheater. It's easier to win when you are a cheater. That's all I got to say about that.
And here's my thing with this. So it's really easy to pull out like one example. It's really easy to be like, look at Tom Brady. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. And everybody said that he was going to be garbage. Have you seen this dude's draft picture?
He looked like a 12-year-old, bro. His arm was like, his muscle, like the top of his arm was not even this big. Like, it's crazy.
Right. I mean, Joe Montana went in the 3rd round. Were the scouts wrong about Joe Montana? Should Joe Montana have been a 1st-round draft pick? Well, I mean, you probably made that argument in hindsight, but at that time, no. because Joe Montana was even a full-time starter at Notre Dame. So you have to look at what people's situations are. We can't just go in this hindsight after someone's had a 20-year career and be like, yeah, everybody should easily saw that. The thing is, there are some guys that you look at and you're like, that dude has it. Joe Burrow last year. Everybody looked at Joe Burrow last year and be like, that dude is special. You could just see it. But the thing is, like you mentioned, Woody Flo, you mentioned Dwayne Haskins earlier and how he was getting some hype. That quarterback draft sucked. They had to hype somebody.
Tim Daniel Jones.
I'm not gonna touch that. But they had to hype. They had to hype somebody in that draft, and so that's why he got hyped. But the thing is, every year there are misses in the draft. Every year there's hits. I mean, shoot, a guy that I just mentioned a few minutes ago, George Kittle. We got him in the 5th round? I think it was 4th or 5th round. There's no way that George Kittle should have made that far into a draft. You can't hit every single guy. There's going to be guys they don't get utilized in college. They're down on the depth chart. They don't have talent around them. There's a million different reasons you might miss somebody at the college level. Hey,
you saw that, right?
Eric. I just wanted to say that I left it alone. He said, "Oh, we got his guys right now." That's not true, man. You got Saquon for like 3-4 weeks every 2 years.
Well, the good news is he's coming off of an injury, so he should be okay for at least a while this year.
Yeah. By the way, anybody want to trade for Saquon in our fantasy league? Just this is the year to get him.
Always peddling his fantasy wares, guys. Always peddling his fantasy wares.
It's an inside joke.
It really
come in here peddling your wares, sir.
Oh man, they'll never get old. They'll never get old.
Oh man, that was great. But yeah, man. So that's a lot of NFL talk for the night, man. And we do only have about 20 minutes, a little over 20 minutes left here. So I do want to get into some other topics as well. And, one big thing that happened, I don't know if anybody watched it or not, because apparently it was very low rated, was the national championship game. Well, national championship games. Yes.
Multiple.
Let me correct myself real quick. One of those was a little more competitive than the other one. So you want to give us your thoughts on the women's game?
I would, man. That was a well played game. First of all, you have to give Arizona props for knocking out UConn. So big ups to them because I did not foresee that happening. But hey, that's why you play the game. Should have saw it coming, but I thought that UConn would go the other way than they actually went. It is what it is. But Arizona really fought, and they came within one bucket, of winning that game. Big ups to Stanford. You were able to get it done. Interesting connection. Russell Wilson's sister actually played on the Stanford team that won the championship. So I saw him at some things where he was on Instagram congratulating his sister and everything. So that's a good story. I like to see, siblings both doing well in, sports or doing well in something together. So very happy to see that and kind of touched my heart a little bit. But that was a great game, man. I mean, watching that game, I was like, man, the men's game is going to be raw after this. It's going to be on. Boy, was I wrong again.
Yeah, man. So we actually were talking back and forth during the game, and I thought for sure that coming off of a very close game, a game which they literally won at the buzzer, that Gonzaga was like, okay, we had our scare. We're gonna be focused. I thought they was gonna come in ready to go. And Baylor came in there and played bully ball, bruh. They came in there, they were just like running at them dudes, daring them to step in and take a foul. They were bodying them on defense. They were aggressive. They were physical. They were shooting lights out. Gonzaga got hit in the mouth and never recovered. They had a brief moment where they kind of climbed back into the game a little bit, but it was like basically Baylor took a breather. It was like, okay, we good now. Let's go out here and finish this. And they came out and started throwing haymakers again, and it was a wrap, man. Like it was not even a competitive game at all. The game honestly wasn't even as close as the final score. And the final score wasn't even close.
Bro, that was a surgical dissection of Gonzaga. Everything that anyone said about Gonzaga all season about how they're not athletic enough, how you're concerned with them in the big games, was the stress of being undefeated going to get to them? All of that hit them at one time. And on top of that, Baylor came into the game and said, not us. You're not making history against us. We're going to slap you around. The coaches are good friends. We know who has bragging rights now. I mean, it's not too much to say other than Baylor realized that there was a national championship game, and Gonzaga may have thought it was like a scrimmage. It's kind of what it felt like. Because I kept waiting for Gonzaga to, like, step it up, and I realized they can't. Baylor is out physicaling them on defense, out hustling them to the ball. Baylor is looking at them in the eyes and saying, I ain't never scared. And then popping threes in their face, taking them to the hole. Look at them like, Baylor going to give it to you. We going to give it to you.
It's too bad it wasn't Xavier. Could have been so perfect.
It was close enough, man.
Yeah, close enough, man. But no, I was really impressed with Baylor, man. They came out, and we talked about a little bit before that because the game against Houston. And, I told you on the show, I was like, bruh, that Houston team is sick, but Baylor, they have the ability to knock their shots down and make that defense less effective. Now, to Houston's credit, they never let the paint get unpacked, but it didn't even matter because Baylor was just like lights out. And I did not think that Baylor was going to be able to do that 2 games in a row, but they did. I mean, Gonzaga was just like, what in the world? Like, these dudes out here, like we in Space Jam 3 out here, like. We'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But yeah, two interesting games. Like I said, one was a little more competitive than the other. The women's game was definitely the more compelling game if you actually like competitive basketball. The second game, the men's matchup, was a little bit better if you were a Baylor fan.
Now, I will say the women's game, that was a clinic in basketball. I say this a lot. People probably don't listen to me, but I'm still going to say it again. A lot of times when you watch a women's game, you see good fundamental basketball. You saw 2 teams that were pretty evenly matched, and you saw one just get the upper hand and one just missed that last shot. That's how close that game was. That's the kind of games I love seeing because it all comes down to just being able to make that last clutch play. That's beautiful basketball for me.
On this note, I just had to show you this.
I saw it.
Oh, Brian Brady Pierce over here now.
Not only is he Brian Brady Pierce, but I guess he's Brady Brian Pierce now.
Pierce.
So is it
Brian Pierce?
Is it Big Shot Brady Brian Pierce into his house? Is that what we're doing now?
Maybe it's Big Shot Brady Braun, the Truth Pierce.
Maybe it's the Big Braun Brady Truth.
That really just made me think of like the Big Show's theme song. I have a feeling that was your intention, so we're just gonna go with it. Rob over
Brady
there crying
Brown.
laughing.
Brady Brown.
Brian Brady.
The
Yeah.
lowercase goat. GOAT, lowercase all.
Bro, did you see the comments that people was throwing at LeBron for the Space Jam 2 trailer?
So I'm gonna tell you the extent of the Space Jam 2 trailer with me. So it comes out. I said, okay, trailer for Space Jam 2. Okay. I watch it. I say to myself, I must be a little sleepy, so I had to go wash my face. And I watched the trailer again. And after I watched the trailer the second time, I had like on Google where when you watch stuff, it puts like a notification, like we're going to see more notifications when stuff comes out about it. Deleted that.
Bro.
What in the world are you doing, LeBron James?
So the thing that killed me was people was like, hold up, bro. In the first Space Jam, Michael Jordan over there winning games with Bill Murray running point guard. They got the board of people you trying to recruit. You out there trying to get like the best of the best. It's like, dude, even in a cartoon movie, you gotta like try to put yourself on a super team. Like,
but here's the thing, that's LeBron.
Oh man,
I know. Brady Brown, aka Brian Brady, may not like that, but the truth fact of the matter is this: LeBron wants the best around him. Now, I know we can sit here and laugh at Space Jam more, but why? Yeah, why even waste the time on the show? I did see an interesting question earlier. Somebody had said, why do people want to, and this wasn't here, this was in the sports group, they're saying why people want to play with KD versus LeBron. And they were saying that, LeBron's a guy who is positionless. So he always has the ball because he's like a point guard, but he's in a power forward's body and he has versatility. So it's hard to have a consistent amount of play and shots. And we saw that in Miami, right? You put LeBron on that team, they changed the whole dynamic for everybody.
Right.
Whereas KD, he's a scorer. KD don't care if he get one rebound, no assist, one block, and one steal. He want 30 points. So he's coming to get his points. All the other stuff, y'all got it. Controlling the ball, you can have it. So, and there was a couple of other points made, but LeBron fans were upset because it's like, oh, you don't know basketball if you say that. But I thought there was some truth into the fact of KD is more of a guy you can put on any team, and the only thing that's going to happen is he's going to take a few shots away from everybody. He can get his on his own. He can get it off the pass, off the bounce, whatever. But he can get you 30 points, and you not even realize it, and it's effortlessly. And he can fit into the flow like he did in Golden State. Whereas I think LeBron more has to be that everything goes through me in order for him to win. And I think that's a big difference. And I actually did agree with, if I were a player, I'd rather play with KD.
Well, here's the other thing you have to think about too. So let's say that even if you rather would play with LeBron from a basketball standpoint, he can do more on the court, right? He can do different things that KD can't do or chooses not to do, however you want to look at it. So maybe somebody wants to play with LeBron from that standpoint. Another big reason I think that people might hesitate to want to play with LeBron and would rather play with KD is, if you look at the Nets right now, do people say, Kyrie Irving and James Harden went and teamed up with KD? No. They put those three guys on the same level. Last year in the playoffs, when Anthony Davis was absolutely dominating people, what did you still hear? LeBron and the Lakers. When you play with LeBron, you will always be Robin. You cannot be Batman with LeBron on the team, even if you are the better player, even if you're playing better, even if you are the unquestioned leader on the team, you are still LeBron's sidekick.
Even if you should get the MVP, but you don't because You're not considered the best player even when you're the one who got him the ring.
Right. Even when LeBron is standing there next to you saying is your team.
But
Even
the
when
funny part
LeBron is admitting that you're better than him.
But
the media is still going to say it's LeBron and the Lakers.
And the funny part is he's the same person is still saying put some respect on my name. So what is it? Or is it AD's team and you're his Robin? Or is it your team and he's your Robin? Because if we want us to still put respect on your name, you're saying you're the reason you won. You were one of the reasons, but not the main reason. And the third reason, in my opinion, that the Lakers won last year is now in LA with the Clippers. Never be Mr. Rondo, who I saw make some ridiculous passes last night that were very impressive.
Yes, playoff Rondo is very real. I'm wondering if he's going to go to the Clippers and be soft like the rest of their team now.
So far, I haven't seen it happen. Apparently,
they haven't been in playoffs yet.
Well, apparently, so far, Paul PG, Mr. Paul George, is playing through a toe injury, and he's starting to get a little bit of his lift and his aggressiveness back that he'd been missing for a few games.
Right, but when does playoff P show up though? That's what I'm looking at. I'm waiting for playoff P, man. Come on.
Nobody wants playoff P.
Well, as a Lakers fan, I want playoff P.
Paul George doesn't want playoff P. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, bro. As a Lakers fan, I'm trying to have playoff P.
You don't want playoff P either because you want to beat the Clippers. So in order for them to get to you to win, unless you play them in the first round, you don't want playoff P.
But the way we might play them in the first round because we might be playing into the playoffs. But you know, man, which actually reminds me, I did see the AD might come back hopefully next week, so that would be huge.
Yeah, I saw something about that earlier.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, man, I'm really happy with what I'm seeing from the Nuggets right now. And I feel like, not because this is my team, but I do feel like they made the best move and he fits into their philosophy really well. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be major for them come playoffs. It gives them another option when someone has a bad night. That's a big thing a lot of teams are missing is that fourth guy that can give you 20, 25 a night if needed, but doesn't have to do it every night. So that's big. He was really a major move. I think Rondo was a very good move for the Clippers as well because he's a big guard. His vision and his ability to make passes. I even watched a couple of Hawks games and saw it. And it's like, how can he still do that? But it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, and he brings the toughness, you know what I'm saying? And he's good from what I saw with the Lakers watching at going to the bench players, the young guys, and say, hey, man, come here. Listen, this is what you got to do. This is what you're doing, and that's why he's mad at you. This is what you need to do. You know, so I think he was a good buffer between LeBron and some of the young guys and the bench players last year. It's not there this year, so we'll see how that affects things once they get everybody back. But I think he does make the Clippers a little bit better, which I don't like, you know, but it happens.
If not, I don't disagree, actually.
Yeah, I don't want the Clippers to be better. I want to be the same team they were last year when we beat them 3 games in a row and send them home.
Hey, so real quick, I do see we've actually had quite a few people log in. So one of the things we did early in the show was took a few minutes to remember DMX, who, for those of you who did not hear, did pass away today.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a favorite DMX song, quote, lyric, anything you want to drop in the chat, go ahead and drop those. But yeah, you know, man, you talk about Denver. The thing that's impressing me about them right now, and I think maybe some of the moves you made at the deadline is helping with this, but he was already kind of on the way up. And this was the guy that you talked about last year in the playoffs that you needed to make the step is Michael Porter Jr.
Yes.
He's playing phenomenal right now. And that's giving you really 4 or 5 guys who on a consistent basis can go out there and get their shots, who can go out there and do it on their own. And they can also play as a team. And I told you last year that I thought y'all were going to be a dangerous team for a while. And I thought it might take you a few years to get to that point. But with some of the moves you made at deadline, y'all might be there now. Y'all, I really do think that Denver is a real contender and a real threat to win the title this year.
Man, I got to tell you, man, it's been a long time since I have felt that way. Forget the media, forget other people. It's been a long time since I have felt that way as a fan. So I'm excited to at least even be included in that. This is one of the better teams in the league now. Especially for where we were starting the year, because we were the beginning of the year, but I was mad. I was ready to fly to Denver and start fighting somebody, but we turned it around. So I didn't have to go Paul Pierce on him, Brian Brady Brian.
Oh, Brian Brady.
But yeah, man, site year in the NBA, a lot of teams are starting to, come up. And truthfully, I do love that. It's great when you got 6, 7, 8 teams that really have a chance to win a championship, right? When you got 2, maybe 3 teams, it's like whatever. You got Brooklyn, you got the Sixers, you got the Bucks in the East, and then you got really the top 6, 7 teams in the West all have a legitimate shot, to win a championship. So that's exciting just because of the diversity that could be there. You can pick this team and be right. You can pick this team versus this team. There's so many different options that you have there. So really excited about NBA playoffs and really looking forward to that. Now, important couple of things that I want to mention before we get off the air tonight. Number one, if you watched Inside the NBA last night or you Google, you can find the equivalent of the City Edition jerseys for the WNBA teams. They're hot. They did a reveal by sending one to like the best players from the teams or, one of the popular players from the team. They're hot. If you're one of those people that say you support the WNBA, you want to see them do well, you have a niece or a sister or a cousin that's into basketball, look at those City Edition jerseys, or I can't remember exactly what they were called. I was too busy gawking at them, to be honest, because they really are. They fire, man. They look good. And check them out, man. Maybe get it for somebody, or just get one. Support them. And we did say last week that we were going to discuss the WNBA draft. So take a few minutes and just, highlight a few things. Number one, Dallas Wings. They have the top 2 picks. They have the 5th pick, and they have the 7th pick. Interesting thing is they only have 3 spots on their roster that need to be filled. So speculation has been they're going to trade either the 5th or the 7th pick, maybe for assets, a future, number one, another year, whatever. But that's going to give them an opportunity to add some really good players. Names at the top of the draft, ladies that the expectations they're going to get drafted early are Charlie Collier, the forward center from Texas. There's a center, I think the name is Awat Kuier or something similar to that. Forgive me if I'm wrong, from Finland. The wing from Tennessee, Renia Davis. Ari McDonald, the guard from Arizona. She's a diminutive player, but I think she's played herself into the top 4 or 5 picks off what she did in the tournament. If you're going to come on, that's the time to come on when everybody's watching you. You've got Ariella Guarantees. I'm sure I messed it up, but she's a guard from Rutgers. You got Jasmine Walker from Alabama, Chelsea Dungy from Arkansas, a guard. Dana Evans from Louisville, Natasha Mack from Oklahoma State, Kiana Williams, guard from Stanford, who won. Then you got Shyla Hill, who's a small guard as well. She's from Australia. I highlight her because she's been playing pro ball since she was 16 in Australia. So she's a guy that has like 4 years of experience playing pro ball. So she can come in and have a LaMelo Ball-esque impact on her team wherever she's drafted, but to round out, the picks, we talked about the picks that the Wings have, but to round the other picks, at 3, you have the Indiana Fever. At 6, you have the New York Liberty. At 8, Chicago Sky. 9, Minnesota Lynx. 10, the LA Sparks. 11, the Seattle Storm. And then 12, the champs, the Las Vegas Aces. So obviously, when you have one team that has, 4 picks, then some other teams don't have picks, but that's pretty much the draft order. What'll be interesting is I think the Dallas Wings and whatever moves they make could redefine the draft. Because if someone gives you an offer that's too good to pass up for like number 2, you're probably going to take it. That could change the whole draft board based on needs. But that's why I just wanted to highlight, some players and not necessarily where I think they're going to go, because I do think there's going to be at least one trade that the Wings are going to do that's going to affect the draft and kind of change where people are going to go.
Yeah, I mean, having 4 picks is kind of crazy out of 12.
Yeah. And that's the awesome thing about the WNBA is, you have 12 teams. So the draft is nowhere near as long, right? The bad thing about it is you have 12 teams, so you need more. I know that they're working on getting sponsorship and different things to try to make that league more appealing to the masses and put some more money into it. I'm very excited about that. I hope for expansion soon. The Charlotte could use the steam back. They're now the Atlanta Dream. Some other teams that would be, I think, great cities for women's basketball. So hopefully, they start to have some expansion happen in the next couple of years. And I also want to shout out the WNBA. This will be the year 25. So we've had 25 years of the WNBA. That's an accomplishment.
Yep.
I'm happy for it. And, I've been on the forefront all along in equality for women's sports. And just a side bit of information for you avid listeners, the women's national team for soccer now makes more money than the men's team, brings in more revenue than the men's team. And they're still in a fight for quality and pay. So that shows you that no matter where you get to, there's still some things that need to be, fixed and righted within these sports. So let's be people that helps make some change. And the way you do that, again, buy the jerseys, go to the games, support them on social media, do those things, and we want them to be around for our kids, our grandkids, so if we want that to happen, we have to support. You don't support, they don't stay around. And this year, this season is not going to run directly with the NBA for the entire season. So, that's not a reason to not watch. Support them, man. You like what you see, support them. Show them some love.
I think one thing that is worth, kind of mentioning here is all the people who want to look at the WNBA versus the NBA. They're like, oh, you talk about equal pay and da 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 da. And then, we even said last week, like, look, nobody honestly expects that dollar for dollar that the WNBA players are going to get like NBA players. The revenues don't match. There's an expectation they should be able to get the same percentage of the income that the men do over in the NBA. But if you're going to make that argument, if you're one of those people that's, walk around saying, the women don't deserve as much because the men bring in a lot more money, then make sure that you go and you look at the soccer teams and you look at the fact that the women are bringing in more money than the men, and you had that same energy. And you make sure that you say that the women deserve to make more than the men in soccer because they're bringing in more money. If you're going to make that argument on one side, make sure you're making it on both.
Yeah. So I'm not going to get too much into it, but Draymond Green made some comments. We're shocked. Draymond Green made some comments that tick people off.
I'm shocked.
He was basically saying that, ways to address the pay gap is that women need to stop complaining and take action. So he was saying, in some follow-up comments that, they need to use social media and promote themselves and put themselves out there more. Candace Parker was very upset with him, as well as Megan Rapinoe from the U.S. Soccer Women's National Team. Basically, I think Draymond Green echoes a lot of people. They don't say it. He doesn't care. He says it. But you have to realize it's just like Black Lives Matter movement. It's just like, movements for transgender individuals, LBGT, that whole community, those movements, you can't do it by yourself. There has to be help provided. There has to be other people jumping on board with that, pushing it for you as well. And the main way, again, Draymond Green, you can put your money where your mouth at too. Buy some jerseys, go to games, support the teams, tweet out when you're at the games, IG Live when you're at the games, let people know, support. I'm not saying, hey, go pour money into the WNBA, become a part owner of a team, anything like that, but do the basics. He says he's on their side, but he's saying that these are the things that they're not doing, but they're still complaining. So I say, do your part then. Like I said last week, the main person who supported women's basketball, rest his soul, is no longer with us, and that was Kobe Bryant. So who's stepping up to bridge that gap? Who's stepping up to support the WNBA and bring some of that audience from the NBA over to the WNBA? That's what's needed. Simply, it's not a handout that's needed for them, but help them get that awareness. Help people see, let's check out what's going on with the WNBA. Let's see what they got. Because I can confidently say most people, if you watch them, you see what's going on with the WNBA, you're going to be excited. But you have to give it a chance.
Well, and I'll go ahead and put it like this. I think when you talk about the promotional side of things, when you talk about that, is it really the job of the WNBA players to go out there and have to promote? If Draymond Green makes a really great play, or if Steph Curry hits a three from like the fifth row, do they have to go on social media and post videos of it? Or does ESPN do that for them? It's real easy to sit back and tell other people they need to work harder and promote themselves when you literally have people who do it for you. You only have to go out and promote yourself. All you have to do is pop off at the mouth and say stupid stuff and get attention. Anybody can do that. We do it every week.
Yeah.
Might not
3 or 4 letter
stupid.
networks.
Yeah, it might not always be. It might not really always be stupid stuff. Although sometimes we do be saying foolish stuff too. But
I am not a part of the tomfoolery that happens. None of those hijinks are me.
Scallywag. Haberdashery.
That was hogwash and poppycock, by the way.
Yeah, man. Some of my thing is like, bro, just why don't you go and use some of the power that you have as an NBA player when you are going onto these shows to do interviews? Why don't you actually ask them to talk about more WNBA stuff? If you were to turn on your TV last week, what do you think was the ratio of women's college basketball to men's college basketball in terms of the highlights? Women might have got like one day during like their championship day. That was it. And the rest of the week, you might have seen like one story here or there. They were like little 30, 45-second clips.
Right.
Whereas the men, they would have literally an entire hour talking about like 2 men's games.
Yep.
So
Gotta be
if
more
you're
equitable.
going to say something like, oh, go out there and promote yourself, help them. Help them get promoted. It's like we have our own show. It's a reasonable expectation that if you and I want to grow this show, that we go out and promote ourselves. That is a reasonable expectation. If we were to go join a league of podcasts, there would be an expectation that league is going to do something to help get us promoted, right?
I would think so, man.
Yeah. So why is the WNBA itself not doing more to make this happen? Why is the NBA itself not taking care of its partner organization and helping them get this exposure? Stop putting it off on the individual players. Start putting it off on the organizations, on the teams. Put it off on the NBA, who's supposed to be helping the WNBA grow.
Yep. I would
You know, like you
100%
said, it's not
agree.
handouts. They're not. Nobody's like saying you got to go dump money in their account. You ain't got cash out them nothing. But you know, at least go ahead and help them get some exposure.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, that's all. Of
And you know, man, of course we're over. We're going
course,
to be
man.
over for the beginning. So tonight, what I'd like to do is instead of us doing our regular outro, we just need to throw up the X one time with a little Rough Riders in it. That's it. Y'all hit us up next week. You know who it is. You know what it is. You know what time. Don't forget those friends.
And I'm just gonna leave you by saying, the player caller's gonna give it to you.
What else y'all really want from the play callers?
Somebody let me know. See y'all next Friday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hey, bring some friends and watch some freaking WNBA games. Holla.
We should watch the draft. Good grief.
Yeah, I know, right? It's only 12 picks. Oh, and speaking of draft, before y'all go, the 2021 NFL draft, April 29th, we will not be on Friday night because we will be live for the first round of the draft Thursday night. Put it on your calendars. We got something special for y'all this year. You might want to tune in.
Yes, sir.
Holla.
One last time.